guys, Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle, and today I would like to show off my most boring army. And why is it the most boring? If it's boring, why did I start it? Well, Star Wars is kind of my Achilles heel when it comes to anything. I just adore Star Wars. I remember back in the day, a few friends of mine texted me saying, hey, we're trying out this new game X-Wing and it's kind of fun. Are you interested? And I was like, give me an hour. And I immediately drove to Toys R Us. They didn't have any X-Wing. I drove to Target. They didn't have any X-Wing. And then I kind of remembered that I thought I saw some X-Wing stuff at a bookstore. So I went to Barnes & Noble and they had tons of X-Wing stuff. So I bought it all. I spent like $200 on X-Wing and then showed up at my friend's house just with armfuls of Star Wars X-Wing. And oh, we had a grand old time. We would play X-Wing long into the night. But when a new Star Wars wargaming game came out, I knew I had to get all of it. There's 4 factions. Technically, there's 5 factions now because there's like a scum and villainy faction. But at the time, there was only the main 4: the Rebels, the Imperials, the Battle Droids, and the Clone Troopers. And I knew I wanted all of it. And I really, really wanted the Battle Droids. Probably one of my favorite things in all of Star Wars. And so I was like, well, do I go hard into Battle Droids or do I because I want to get everything and I want to be excited about everything. So maybe I should start out with the army I'm interested in the least. Because I do like the Rebels. I mean, how can you not like the Rebel Alliance and Chewbacca and Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker? Like, those guys are cool, but like, I always kind of liked the bad guys. I actually collect some Star Wars stuff. I collect all of the Imperial Lego minifigures. So I've got dozens and dozens of Stormtroopers, Death Troopers, Shock Troopers, General Veers, Darth Vader. I've got like a huge collection of Star Wars minifigures. And so the Empire would be a great choice, but I knew I needed to start with the Rebel Alliance because even though I'm not as stoked on them, if I just went hard into the Rebels, got them done, got them out of the way, then I would have even more fun painting up and collecting some of those armies that I'm a little bit more invested in. But with that being said, the Rebels have totally grown on me a lot. I have played this army many a time in games of Star Wars Legion against my nemesis, Sean. And we've had a bunch of games, and I think one of them was actually pretty close. I've never won. I've never beaten Sean in anything. Never once. I've never beaten him in X-Wing. I've never beaten him in Kill Team. Never beaten him in Star Wars Legion. Although I'm gonna say that the reason that I always lose for Star Wars Legion is not because I'm a bad general, but because I didn't realize that there were huge points decreases for the Rebel Alliance because they were kind of underpowered and overcosted. So the next time we play, I have all of those new points in my head. And so I'm gonna get to bring like 25% more Rebel Alliance to the battle. And hopefully that'll turn the tides and I will finally be able to beat Sean. I also think I'm gonna be able to beat Sean because I am going to spam the best thing. And that is the Rebel ATRTs. They're not necessarily the best unit in the Rebels, but I always have a lot of success with my ATRT that came in the starter box. And so now I've got 3. I started this army by the classic Star Wars Legion way. Star Wars Legion is a very, very good game. And the starter boxes for Star Wars Legion are immaculate. There's 2 starter boxes. There's one for the classic trilogy and one for the prequel trilogy. Yeah, the prequel trilogy. I always get prequel and sequel trilogy confused. But I want them to make a box for the sequel trilogy, although they probably won't because the new movies, the new trilogy hasn't really featured stuff that's super unique. Like the First Order Stormtroopers look a lot like the old Stormtroopers because it's 30 years difference. It's not that much time for there to be these big, huge changes. Although I guess how long was the gap between the original trilogy or the prequels and the sequel or the original trilogy? I think there's only 19 years because that's how old Luke was in the first movie. And his mom died of sadness on the day that the Empire started. So yeah, in 19 years, the Empire came up with AT-ATs and all of this amazing stuff. And then 30 years later, they didn't come up with as much stuff. So they probably won't do a sequels box, but I still would love them to come out with like Rey and Kylo because they're just the absolute coolest. And Poe Dameron, even though there's not really flyers in this game, it would still be fun to have Poe Dameron and little BB-8 rolling around. I would buy those in a heartbeat. I'd also buy everything in a heartbeat because I am a horrible Star Wars shill. But the starter boxes, I got the Empire versus the Rebel starter box, and it came with a lot of this stuff. It came with the Rebel troopers, which are excellent. Not in game, but just the Rebel Alliance General Foot Soldiers are great. And it came with the ATRT and Luke Skypotter, which I have lost, but that's fine because I actually don't play with Luke Skywalker. Although the one time I did, Luke was actually able to take out one of Sean's AT-STs, which was great. Another friend of mine who always plays against Sean and also often loses, although he's a little bit better of a general than I am. He's never actually managed to take down one of the AT-STs, and I did with Luke. So I wear that as a badge of honor. But it comes with the starter boxes come with like 2 full armies pretty much. And it comes with some barricades and all the dice and tokens you need. It actually doesn't come with all the dice you need. Star Wars Legion is on a D8 system. It has some D6s for your armor, and then it has D8s for your attacks. And so you do need to get the specific dice, and you probably need to buy like 3 packs of the dice, which is fine. I do like fun, pretty, unique dice. It just kind of makes the game a little bit more fun when you're rolling those, but it does add up. The dice are a little pricey. But I've started to fall in love with the Rebels. I have also collected smatterings of the things for the other armies that I just couldn't resist. One day I was at the game store and I saw the STAP speeder bikes for the battle droids. I'm like, I mean, I have to buy 2 of those right now. What am I? And then I painted them up that evening. But I do love the Rebels. And the Rebels, they came up with some really brilliant ways to get more vehicles into the Rebels because the Rebels actually didn't have that much stuff in the movies. And so Luke's land speeder became their medium attack vehicle, which is brilliant. I actually painted my pilot as Marty McFly from Back to the Future because I can't help myself. I always have to find humor in things. But it also has a Twi'lek gunner and a Rodion gunner, which I usually always take in game. They're kind of superfluous and expensive when it comes to points, but I think it does help. I was able to take out an entire squad of battle droids in one shooting turn with just this one Luke's land speeder, which would be the worst war vehicle in the whole world. I mean, it's a silly thing, but I love it. It's just a brilliant way to get something from Star Wars, something iconic from Star Wars, into this war board game. It's not a board game. It's a tabletop war game. I should show it the respect it deserves. With Marty McFly piloting it. And of course, the ATRTs are from the Clone Wars, and having the Rebels pilot them is perfect. I think the Rebels could actually take the ATRTs in Star Wars Battlefront, which is kind of the first time that the Rebels had access to those, but I like them a lot. I mean, I have 3. They're wonderful. Oh, I can't wait to play these against Sean and probably lose. He's probably going to shoot them all down turn 1, especially if he brings the battle droid AAT, which is can put out a dumb amount of firepower. But there's also some really fun stuff that the Rebels get to do. They have the Pathfinders, who essentially can forward deploy if you're kind of looking for like a 40k explanation. They can deploy anywhere on the battlefield. They are definitely a glass cannon. The entire Rebel army is a glass cannon. There's defense dice, and you can have is red defense dice and black defense dice? They have the worst one you can have. It's essentially a 6-up save. The Rebels have an army-wide 6-up save, which, it feels bad when you roll it and you just get nothing, which I so often do. Things just go off the board so quickly. But there's still a lot of fun stuff to be had, especially now that they've had a huge points decrease. I can bring a lot more Rebels, so it doesn't matter how fast I'm taking them off the board if I still have a huge pool of stuff to work with. Another big mistake I made was picking Jyn Erso from Rogue One to be my leader, my warlord for this army. She's really bad. She's not bad. She has lots of excellent rules, but she's a little bit more of a support HQ, and I am bad at strategizing. So often I'll kind of try to use her as a blunt force instrument, which is usually how you use the Jedi in this game. But yeah, she'll die if she gets shot at. She has a decent melee attack and a decent shooting attack, but she has to be way too dangerously close to use those. She's a support character, and I have not learned how to use her properly. And so I thought, okay, I always lose my games. My HQ is a humongous point sink in my army, and she's doing nothing. So I got to replace her. And so I thought, well, why don't I get something like a Jedi? And so I got that girl from Star Wars Rebels. Not my favorite Star Wars show. It's fine. I know everybody likes Rebels, but it's just not as good as Clone Wars. And I love Clone Wars. I bought Sabine Wren to be my new leader because she can have a lightsaber in the dark sword. She has great pistols. She has a jetpack to help her with mobility. I thought that she would be an excellent choice to command my Star Wars Legion forces. And then I found out that she's not an HQ. She's an operative, which is kind of like an elite choice in Star Wars Legion. And so I would still have to take Jyn Erso or some other commander so that I could then bring in the elite choice. So my plans were thwarted. Also, Sabine has a crazy paint job in the movies, and so I'm a little like scared to paint her up. It's gonna be an absolute challenge, but one day I will paint her up and take her in a game. I think what I need is Princess Leia. Princess Leia is kind of a cheaper HQ with a little bit more of a blunt force instrument, and hopefully that will help my Star Wars Legion army achieve greatness. Although one of the unsung heroes of this force is my fleet troopers. Everyone knows the fleet troopers. They were in the first seconds of Star Wars ever with their dumb like racing bike helmets. But these guys are supposed to be really bad in game, but they're great. I've actually found really good success with them. I think because Sean knows that they suck, and so he'll tend to ignore them, and so they stick around until late game, and once they get in range with their pistols, they actually can put out a decent amount of firepower. They get to add extra dice to their attack pool. One thing that's really fun about Star Wars Legion is all attacks are pools, so it's not like every Rebel Trooper gets to roll 2 dice, but they roll different types of dice. There's white, red, and black dice, which are the strong, medium, and weak attacks. And so when you're creating your dice pool, your Rebel Troopers, they all have pretty bad guns. So you put, 5 white dice into your hand. But then, the grenade launcher, that's a red and a black. So you add those dice to your hand, and then the Z6 rotary gun, which was horribly expensive. I feel like I paid 30 points a rotary gun when I was fighting Sean before I knew about the updates. And then once I found out the updates, it's like 18 or 19, I think it is 19 points. So it got a huge points decrease, but that's 3 more black dice. So all of a sudden you're holding a giant fistful of dice, some of those better than others, and you get to roll that. And that's how all of the attacks happen across Star Wars Legion, which can get kind of wacky. Like a vehicle like Luke's Landspeeder that has a ton of different weapons on it, you're putting just a whole collage of dice into your hand and then dumping those. So I really like how Star Wars Legion handles that. I understand some people's complaint where it can feel a little like your models don't matter as much. They're not as unique because they all shoot the same dice or the same combinations of the same dice, but I think it works really, really well. Playing games of Star Wars Legion, even though you're playing with a similar model count and a same size board as big Warhammer 40K, things just don't take as long. Another time-saving thing that Star Wars Legion does is it's not based on inches. I mean, it secretly is based on inches, but instead of moving, one guy 6 inches, and another guy 6 inches, and another guy 6 inches, and you're kind of measuring all of those out, you actually only worry about the movement of the leader. You take your leader, and then you actually have a template that is how far they can move. There's a short, medium, and long template, and you place that on the base. You move him to the other side of the template, and then you just move everybody else to be around him in unit coherency. And so that just makes movement so quick compared to the classic tape measure, and then I knock something over, and then the bad things happen. So yeah, Star Wars Legion, a very different feel to Warhammer 40K, but it still feels like a proper big epic battle, especially with the amount of casualties. Things die really fast in Star Wars Legion, which I think is fun. There's not armor saves. Things just die, and it's great. I actually, to supplement this army, I bought on the Facebook Marketplace from a lovely fella in Canada. He actually sold me the 2 ATRTs and all of my Pathfinders because he bought several boxes. And the Pathfinders are really cool. They are those guys who get to forward deploy, and they come with some Star Wars heroes. They come with Pow and Bistan from Star Wars, the 8th or 9th or 10th or 11th. Rogue One. It's Rogue One, and I love these guys. One great thing about the Rebels is you actually get to see some of the aliens from Star Wars, which they never really get a lot of time to shine, probably because it's really hard to act in a giant dumb rubber costume, and so they don't make people do that in the movies very often. But I mean, you get Mon Calamari, you get Prune Face. His name is, the action figure was called Prune Face. They actually have a real name in Star Wars. You get Rhodions, Twi'leks. Is there any other fun stuff? Duros, which a lot of people mistake for Nemoidians, but they're not Nemoidians, they're Duros. And I need to get a pack of the Star Wars, the Rebel Trooper expansion, which comes with an Itheran, the Hammerhead. It comes with a Gran, the three-eyed guys. A Claudette, there's like a green frog-looking alien. That pack would do a great job of supplementing the number of Star Wars aliens that I could actually bring in this Star Wars Rebel army. Oh, and another great thing about Star Wars Legion, it has cards for all of your units. And you actually create a deck of cards, very similar to the game Conquest: Last Argument of Kings, although it behaves a little bit differently, but you pick, all of your units have a thing. They can be troopers, they can be elites, they can be heavy vehicles, medium vehicles, HQ choices. And so you have this deck that is all of your units, and then you decide, okay, I'm pretty sure in this turn, I am gonna want all of my troopers to go first, followed by the vehicles. Or maybe you wanna flip that. You want one vehicle to just do some smashing, and then let all of your infantry fill in. So you make yourself a deck, and then you can pull off of that deck. And that will let you know which unit is available for you to command next. And so what's great is that I feel like it makes the turn move a lot faster because you've already kind of planned out what you're gonna do. Often in Warhammer 40,000, I'll start out with an idea in my mind of what I want this turn to look like. But after the first thing that goes bad for me, I'm like, oh God, okay, now I'm scrambling. Do I move this? Do I move this? Am I gonna put this into a bad situation? And thinking on the fly is probably why I never win games. Because it can lead you to making some pretty big mistakes. They don't feel like big mistakes in the moment, but you're like, okay, I'm gonna move these guys out to shoot because he just blew up my guys over here, so I want to blow up his guys over here. But now you've doomed that squad because you moved them into a bad position where they can now take returning fire. Where I feel like Star Wars Legion saves me a little from that because you do have to do a lot of preparation and planning for your turn. And there are certain ways around your deck where you can do some finagling to make sure that you get to use what you want to use. Even though I started this army to just get it out of the way so that I can move on to the really, really cool stuff, the battle droids, the clone troopers, the Empire, I have come to love the Rebels. I learned a lot painting these guys because I knew I wanted my Star Wars guys to look really, really good. I watched all of Sarastro's painting guides and he's phenomenal. And so I'm like, these guys all have to be perfect. And so I started to try to achieve perfection, sort of. I still army painted, but then I was very, very unsatisfied with my work. I was base coating everything, edge highlighting everything, bringing up the highlights with a brush. And I wasn't getting the look I really wanted, and I was getting really, really frustrated. So one day I just decided, you know what? I'm just gonna use Army Painter Speed Paint. And it turned out so much better. Actually, taking a step back and letting a tool that's good at a certain thing do the work for me turned out so much better. And it's how I painted probably half of these guys, and it's been so much better. I mean, the Fleet Troopers are speed paints, the Commandos are speed paint, the Pathfinders are speed paint, but the Rebel Troopers are all very carefully painted with a brush, and they didn't turn out as good. So it definitely taught me that sometimes you gotta take a step back, and you just got to reevaluate and see like, well, what will actually help me to achieve what I want? I can't just say, okay, maximum effort, I'm gonna paint these to the best of my ability with a brush. Sometimes it's better to use tools and techniques to actually help you achieve what you want. And so I'm very happy with how my Rebels look. The only thing I don't love is all Rebels essentially wear the same thing. They all wear like green camouflage. I've gone with an Endor color scheme. And so sometimes, all the time, it's really hard to tell my different units apart. I mean, I painted some of them with tan and some of them with green, and some of them with tan and green. So, I was thinking that's probably enough to tell the difference. But I mean, when they're all blobbed up, you can't tell. So I might have to maybe paint a stripe of color on the bases just to make it a little bit easier to tell which units are which. But it does make for really good looking glamour shots of different units all together. But yeah, that is one thing that I have to work on. Painting up my Empire models, it's a lot easier. Stormtroopers, bone white. Death Troopers, black. Like, they just have such easy to understand color schemes. But, another thing about color schemes is one thing I have found tricky about Star Wars Legion models, even though I actually found them very easy to paint up, everything that I've painted has been pretty darn quick. I think it's something to do with the scale. They're in a 32mm scale, although they're 32mm scale actual human scale, 32 millimeters to the brow of the miniature. So they're much smaller than 40K models. And so there's physically less model to paint. And so they paint up a lot quicker with a similar amount of detail to Warhammer 40K models. So there's still all of those fun details to spend time into. But, instead of a backpack being, almost an inch, a backpack is just a little tiny thing. And so it takes like 5 brushstrokes to get it all done. But the tricky thing is, I'm not just making them look good, I'm replicating what I saw in the movies and TV shows. And so sometimes I'll paint on a blue and I'll be like, that's a good blue. I would be happy with that blue in any other situation, but that blue doesn't have as much green in the blue as it had in the movie. So I have to try again to get it exactly right. And so that leads to a little bit of frustration, but it also leads to some fun because I do like replicas and props and making things. And so it adds an extra little layer of challenge to try to make them look just like they did in the movie. This Rebel army is well over 800 points, which is like the standard big battle for Star Wars Legion. But there's still a bunch of stuff I want to add. Asmodee or Fantasy Flight or whoever owns Star Wars Legion at this point, they just came out with these Battle Force boxes, and the Rebel box has only models I don't own. So I have to pick up that box. It comes with the Rebel Commandos, it comes with Leia, and I think Chewbacca. It comes with the Rebel turret, the dish turret that's fired at the AT-ATs or the AT-ATs in Empire Strikes Back. Is that all it comes with? And Tauntaun Riders! It comes with 4 Tauntaun Riders! I need Tauntaun Riders. I don't think that Tauntauns would fare very well on the ice planet off of the ice planet of Hoth and in probably the very warm, planet Endor. Or was Endor a moon? One of the shield generator was located on one of Endor's moons. And so I don't remember if it was the forest moon of Endor or is it the forest moon of Endor? Like, I don't know, I'm getting into the Star Wars weeds, but it'll be silly to see the Tauntauns running through the forest, but I still think it'll look pretty sick. And I actually do have one model that's not here because it's still in pieces. I've clipped it from the sprue, but it is in pieces, and that is the Rebel Alliance Party Bus. I don't remember the actual name of the vehicle, but it is literally a bus. It is a transport, and it is an excellent choice for the Rebels because they have such miserable defense characteristics, and so it's a great way to get units that can do some serious damage to where they are where you need them on the battlefield. Like I think maybe 2 squads of Rebel fleet troopers would be excellent in a party bus. Actually, Star Wars Luke's Landspeeder can transport 1 model. I've tried that. It doesn't work. Sometimes I'll put Jyn Erso in the Luke's Landspeeder, which is a dumb thing to do because actually Jyn Erso can also forward deploy, and so you can put her anywhere on the battlefield. So it's kind of worthless to have her sitting in the transport, and every time a transport gets hit, everybody riding in the transport takes damage. So the last time I did that, she ended up almost dying just from getting shot as it drives up the board. So I still have a lot of learning to do with this Rebel Alliance army, and I still have a lot of painting to do with this Rebel Alliance army, but I've really been enjoying it. I thought that I would just do it, get it out of the way, and then move on to the fun stuff. But I've actually been finding that I've been putting off the things that I thought I was more interested in so that I could get a couple more Rebel models. And I think that just comes down to I'm playing with this army. And whenever you're actually actively playing with an army, that's your favorite thing in the world. You're thinking about that before you go to bed. You're looking, while you're at work, you're looking at eBay listings and the Asmodee website and being like, ooh, maybe I'll pick that up on the way home. Because it's fun, you're excited, you're interested. And so if I was to stop playing with these Rebels and start playing with something else, I would kind of have to shelf this. And I don't really want to do that. I've been enjoying playing with the Rebels, so I am going to continue to do that. I will, of course, get to all of those other fun things. I'm so excited about the battle droids. Just one of the coolest things, the droidekas, the super battle droids, the assassin droids. But I am enjoying the boring, plain, regular human, wearing clothing off the rack at Kohl's. I'm actually really enjoying the Rebels. And that is not something that I thought would happen, but I am very pleasantly surprised. But you know what else brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction? That's right, our Patreon. Over there, we have tons of super cool terrain STLs ready to populate your wargaming tables, all hosted by comics, games, and things. We also come out with one extra episode of Eons of Battle every single week, where we take a look at our viewers' models and we give them some helpful critiques and criticism on how to improve their painting. We also have a Discord hangout, painting guide PDFs, and we have a new Patreon tier where you can get your name on one of my Black Templar Space Marines to help grow the horde and have it populated with fun names like Mr. PP. We also have merch, link in the description. I have been getting a kick out of my Rebel Alliance. They are a fun ragtag group of scallywags and scoundrels and freedom fighters and POW. Good old POW. Everybody loves POW. Thanks for watching.